Howard Dean was at Politics and Prose in Washington, D.C. for a book signing for his new release, Howard Dean's Prescription for Real Healthcare Reform. The place was standing room only. He made a brief statement and then took questions from the audience.
Thank you, Governor Dean. Do you think it's possible to take this plan that I'm sure is drawn on all the successes and failures of multiple countries around the world to make it the best we can, and then sell it as such and really demonstrate that it's really helping the vast majority of people, and state where it's not, state who's paying, if it's the insurance companies, if it's the ultra-rich. Don't you think that would go a lot further than to quell the rancor than...
Look, I'll just give you my honest opinion about the rancor. A lot of the rancor is people who never liked Obama in the first place, and they're incredibly uncomfortable, not just with this change, but with a lot of change. They are. And they're angry, and they have a right to be, because there's a terrible recession which they had nothing to do with causing. That's causing their life to be much more difficult. So I get the anger. I don't like the tactic of shouting people down and not being allowed to be heard, but I get the anger. I think the anger is legitimate. But a lot of these folks were never going to vote for Obama anyway, and they don't plan on doing it now. And they're ginned up by people who I do think are wrong, and morally wrong, the right-wing talk show hosts who make things up. And I think that's improper and is wrong, and you shouldn't do that. You have a right to do it under the First Amendment, but it's not good for the country. So in this particular debate, I actually believe that if you just keep repeating the truth calmly and often enough, eventually the people who want to get it will get it. But you've got to reassure them. Because when you say things, outlandish things, people begin to believe them unless somebody else stands up and says, no, that's not true. One of the biggest disappointments I've had is with Republicans who, unlike John McCain, who has an enormous amount of personal courage. And remember when Obama somebody said, oh, he's in the town meeting, they got up and said, well, he's a foreigner and he's a Muslim. And he said, no, ma'am, he's a good family person. Now that takes courage. That is a patriotic, wonderful American. You know, I didn't vote for him. But Lord, you'd like to have people like that in your corner. I'd like to see more Republicans standing up and saying things that is outlandish stuff. We're all Americans here, and America only prospers where, despite our disagreements, we stand up for our country and say what's right and speak the truth, and don't try to take temporary political advantage. We are where we are. I think we go.
I wanted to, first of all, compliment you on your work and strategy skills in getting President Obama elected, even though I didn't vote for him. I voted for Nader, but I appreciate
We're not doing that. You got a whole bunch of other people out there doing that, and we are not going to do that here.
And I appreciate your setting the tone of civility. In fact, BBC last night had a report on this stating that there was not a debate going on about healthcare reform in America, but a shouting match. So I appreciate your setting the standard. Why were you not tapped in, even before you got elected, on how to approach the fear, and I would have to admit, illiteracy and undereducation about America's need for healthcare reform?
I think that's a question that a lot of people are asking themselves. I think, to be not as charitable as I probably should be, but more charitable than they deserve, I think we just didn't expect the depth to which the folks have sunk. I mean, to have a former vice presidential candidate of the United States saying her baby would have been killed by Obama's death panels. I mean, I don't think any of us in our wildest imagination, Keith Olbermann couldn't imagine that. So, I just think you're right. We were unprepared for what the lengths people were willing to go to kill this, especially since it's a reason. Look, this is not a single payer. There are probably a lot of people in this audience that wish it were. I thought this was already the compromise. I mean, this is the compromise. People are saying compromise. We've already compromised. This is the last smidgen of reform in the bill as the public option. If you don't have that, you really don't have anything. So, you're right. We should have been better prepared. We were just, And let me just say this. I think this is actually the last gasp of this kind of stuff. Because I mentioned the generational change. The new generation doesn't like this, and they're not going to vote for people who behave like this. Our generation is a generation that was born of conflict, brought up of conflict. We're very confrontational, both sides, both the left and the right. Young people don't like this kind of stuff. And the Republicans, Karl Rove used to talk about polling for anger points and then making people really angry. And you know, he made people angry at gays and various minorities and immigrants and so forth and so on. And that's how they got elected. This is the logical extension of that. And I don't think it's going to fly. So I think we're going to get the bill, and I think we're just going to have a public option because I think the Republicans will get out of the debate, and they don't want anything to do with it. And therefore, when you rely on Democratic votes, the majority of the Democrats want a public option. That's what I think is going to happen. But I can tell you, I think this is kind of the high water mark, or those of us who consider the low water mark. And I think because as this younger generation is getting older every year, their views on how politics should be conducted in this country aren't going to sustain the Republican Party if they continue to do this kind of stuff.